Want me to unload my own trailer? Okay, I needed a vacation anyway. So I was a trucker for a while. And that comes with plenty of stories of crazy things in so many places. One of my favorite stories, however, comes from a piece of malicious compliance that came together just perfectly. The setup. I tend to be a bit on the lazy side when I can get away with it. And I searched for quite some time to find a company that would keep me far away from unloading the trailers myself. I found a good one that had a 95% drop and hook rate. Drop off a trailer full of goods. Then grab a new one that's either loaded or to take to the next pickup. 4.9% of them are either handled by the receiving dock or by lumpers. Dock workers hired by warehouse companies specifically to unload trucks. That 0.1% is a list of places that just want to watch you work. Or be convinced that you really shouldn't operate their lifts. In my contract, I saw that there was a place where your hourly rate for unloading was stated. Not for the hours that you were sitting and waiting to be unloaded, but for when you were the one unloading your own trailer. I also saw that the contract allowed for alterations to be made to the price of this service to be charged to the customer. As a joke, I put in not one, but 2 extra zeros. $1,500 an hour for unloading a trailer? Should deter most people. Most people saw that, got a good laugh, then pulled in someone to unload for me. The event. Most people, like I said, were smart. This run was set to arrive at 0300 to a certain clothing store in the mall. Let's call him IB Nickeled. I'd been to this store a few times before and it was always the same manager, Mr. Dime, receiving me, and it was always the same runaround. If I wanted to get unloaded, I had to wait for someone to get there. Then I'd have to sit and wait while the poor kid back there got the load off. Then I'd have to wait for traffic to ease up to get out, since it was always almost 10:30 by the time I finally left, leaving me with only a couple of hours left on my clock to get to a truck stop for the day. I got there and, yep, Mr. Dime had come in to accept the load. It was always hard to be smart at 0300. And I can only imagine that was part of Mr. Dime's usual runaround. This time was a bit different for a few reasons. 1. He smelled like there was a bit of an herbal calming remedy about him to settle his nerves for the night. 2. He said that he was completely understaffed and there was no one around to unload me. So I'd have to do it myself. 3. I couldn't stay to my usual time because he had to leave before 0500. To be fair to him, I did try and say, sure, but my contract says. I don't give a damn what your contract states. I don't have anyone in until the store opens. And I've got an appointment that's more important than some trucker's contract. Just unload it yourself. Quote. I considered it for a moment and went back up to my truck to get my tablet. This was in 2019 before the virus, and the company had just swapped over to tablets for certain things, like signing off on expenses or getting permissions. Mr. Dime was fuming when I came back and handed him the tablet. Just read through and sign with your finger. He didn't read through. I had 20 pallets at 1,500 pounds each. The only available tool to unload was a manual pallet jack. I started my work clock and began unloading at 0315. At 0500, Mr. Dime looks on in satisfaction to see me about 3/4 of the way through as he's out the door. At 0515, Mr. Dime's replacement, Mr. Quarter of the day shift, comes running in with his face white as a sheet to see me taking off the 4th to last pallet. Please tell me that I'm reading this wrong, he pled fruitlessly. I wish I could, I lied, knowing that Mr. Dime was about to be up a muddy creek with a spoon. I even tried telling Mr. Dime what he was getting into, but he just skimmed and signed. He slumped. Wait here. I need to call my district manager. Better be quick. I want to be out of this lot by 0630 to beat the morning rush and get a good breakfast. He ran back and I continued unloading. When I finally got the last pallet off at 0550, I turned off my time clock as the district manager came in. We'll call him Mr. Dollar just to keep consistent. Followed both by Mr. Quarter, who was looking somewhat relieved, and by Mr. Dime, who was somewhere between terrified and furious. "You're Mr. Aero?" Mr. Dollar asked, holding a printout and looking to it for the name. "That's me," I agreed. "I take it they sent over the contract Mr. Dime signed?" Quote. "Yes. And that's just it. Mr. Dime is accusing you of forging his signature on this, since there's no way he'd sign off on a multi-$1,000 contract just to unload a trailer. Especially since he claims you insisted on unloading it yourself." I whistled. "That's a heck of an accusation. Hey, is that CCTV I see up in that corner over there?" I asked, knowing full well that the entire loading dock was covered by a slew of cameras. The one I pointed out was positioned just right to catch the whole conversation at the door. "Mr. Quarter, get the footage," Mr. Dollar said. "We don't have audio, but we do have visual on them." Mr. Dime lost his fury and now just looked petrified. The fallout. One review later and I was grinning like a loon back to my truck. I called my manager, booked some home time, and walked away with enough money to last to the end of the month. The next time I went into that IB nickeled, there was a new, much more sensible manager who always had a man on staff to unload the trucks. Edits. Some typos. And to clarify a few things. 1. Yes, I milked it a bit, though not as much as some people might think. Like I said, I was regularly there from 0300 to 10:30 at the latest. Throw on top of that the fact that I've never been the healthiest of individuals, and it took me that long to keep from hurting myself. This was during the summer in SoCal. And even at night it was still 90°F outside. Hotter in the trailer without any air conditioning. A fat man with no AC is going to take all the time he wants. 2. Why didn't Mr. Dime do any of this himself, and why did he lie? Truckers tend to get the short end of the stick, even when we're regulars to a place. This was the 5th or 6th time I'd been there, spread out over the course of 4 months or so. So I was familiar enough that I was recognized at the dock, but not so much that they really cared to keep track of it. The manager figured he could probably get away with shafting me since he claimed I didn't like how long I was waiting. I feel like he's made other truckers get to that point, but none of them had hourly rates like mine on their contract. He's just one of many that thought he could get away with blaming it on that damn trucker when it went wrong for him. 3. What happened while we watched the video was pretty anticlimactic. The recording was on Mr. Quarter's phone when he came back and was pretty low quality. But you could still make out that I argued with him about unloading for a minute before coming back. And he did indeed sign it. Mr. Dollar said, "You can go, Aero." Mr. Dime, "Go wait in the office." Now, I got going while the going was good. And this, kids, is why you don't double down on your error when you make a mistake. Genuine mistakes can be explained away with maybe a warning. Outright lying on top of the mistake easily escalates it to gross negligence and is easily a friable offense. Good MC with extra petrol needlessly poured on top. I'd have refused to lump for $15 an hour too. I'm not a trucker, but I know plenty. $15 per hour is insulting, considering what the average hourly is for in-scope work, let alone doing something much more physical and demanding than the in-scope work. I'm a firm believer that out-of-scope work that has a specific fee needs to be set at a rate that discourages the behavior, not encourage it, since $15 per hour is minimum wage, and you're much more valuable doing your actual job. I have a background as a HD mechanic, but now do piecework technical install. When we're sitting on site with our thumb up our rear and can't do our job, we're losing money, so the company charges accordingly. $100 per hour charged for standby to the client. At the standard labor rate division, roughly 50-50 split between me and the company. Just cause it wasn't up there and I was curious. 3.15 to 5.50 equals 2.58 hours at 1500 pH equals $3,870. That is a nice chunk of change to be walking away with. Mr. Penny made you into Mr. 4K. I hope whatever appointment he had was worth it, lol. So, I be nickeled became pay me plenty. I work in logistics. My favorite phrase is, I don't know. I'm just a stupid truck driver, which is always said with a smirk and a shrug. But I know the truth. I promise to keep your secret. As long as you promise to keep my dumb CSR secret. Nice MC. You made out like a bandit. I would have loved to hear the private conversation between Dollar and Dime after you left. It was always fun when you do stuff like that. When I was a driver for a reefer company, I ended up doing a lot of unloading my own because the lumpers would get in the range of $500 $700. But we would get like $100. So I started a lumping LLC with business licenses and forklift certifications as all the states we regularly needed to pay for lumping. Get the quote. Send the request. Get the funds. Lump myself. Or when delayed at the receiver over long holiday weekend and get paid hourly because you arrived on time and they closed. Literally a paid vacation. Mr. Dime got drawn and quartered. Eat your crow while it is warm and tender, or you may be forced to eat it cold and tough. In the days where everyone owns a pocket-sized recording studio, cover your own ass. As an ex-trucker myself, FCK having to unload your truck. I get paid to drive. Having to unload makes me lose money. Almost a blessing that those other managers arrived and got to cry through the pain, rather than having to justify it after the fact. Oh man, I love the names. I liked your naming convention here. Makes it easy to tell ranks of the employees without giving them real names. Whenever someone asks you to sign or email your demand to them, best to take a step back and check what hell you're about to unleash. Time-tested advice that some people just don't understand. Bravo, you, beautiful MC, this. No idea why he just unloaded himself. Pretty certain I worked for one of these stores on the morning crew. I find it wild any of them had one of the workers unload the truck. It was always my manager doing it because you needed to have specific training. That store sounds like a mess. 2 things. 1. I had no idea you guys sometimes had to unload your own trucks. That's not driving. Asking someone to do a bunch of manual labor after trying to stay awake and alert for hours of highway driving, then get back in the truck and go somewhere to grab a bite and catch some sleep is unreasonable. There should always be people available to unload, even if that means that Mr. Dime is doing it himself. In fact, I see no reason why he wouldn't. I would. 2. You handled it perfectly. You set your price and they were dumb enough to take it. You even warned them. Good job. I love the MC, but as someone who regularly unloads 1 ton and up wine and grocery pallets with a manual jack, how in the hell did 20 pallets take you 3 hours? Years ago I used to be the night fill boss of a hardware store. A guy in the trades department asked me to put something right up in top stock for them. I was required to do the task as my machine. A walkie stacker, like a cross between a forklift and an electric pallet jack, was able to get in much closer to this particular rack, and the item being put up there was quite expensive. He told me the position was prepared with gluts and braces for the racks and ready to receive the pallet. It wasn't. I managed to save the load with the tips of the fork tines of the walkie stacker without damaging anything, and my spotter witness said it was the most amazing bit of maneuvering they'd ever seen. Get to the office. Sort the paperwork for the morning shift to review and process. Camera footage isn't available for the upper corner of the trade department, so it's going off. Witness accounts. Just me and my spotter, with all other Nightfill staff in other parts of the store and unable to comment. The guy from trades lies and told them he never told me to put it up there. Only he wrote a note and left it on my desk. Showed the bosses the note. He then claimed he never told me the area was prepared and that I should have checked before placing the pallet. Normally. Very true. However, this was in his department where I was almost never working, as they had their own fillers, drivers and machines, and no less than 3 people. 2 his own staff. Saw him tell me it was all sorted and I just needed to lift in place with my machine to ensure a safe lift. He got fired.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epicaricast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.